Right, hello guys, and welcome to today's video. In today's video, we are going to be covering some huge news that broke last night about a lawsuit that is coming up between Optic Scump and hecz and the Optic brand to sue Activision for $680 million over the Call of Duty League's monopoly on COD esports. We're going to talk about that, and I'm going to go through you with the details of everything that they are suing over. And also, I'm going to talk about the impacts this could have on Call of Duty in a whole, from the COD competitive scene itself to the actual games we play, how we might not see ranked play anymore. This is going to have huge ramifications on the Call of Duty that we love and know, especially with esports, competitive Call of Duty, anything, esport related or competitive, rank play, etc. This is going to have huge ramifications. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about all the details that are in this lawsuit that was posted late last night. But I want you guys to let me know down below, what do you think about this lawsuit? Or are you on Scump and hexz's side? Do you think they have something to go for? Once you obviously hear the details I'm going to show you guys, let me know down below your thoughts and opinions. Do you think Activision had this coming a long time ago? Because this is some quite interesting details in this that seem like Optic Scump and hecz do have a massive case to be filing here against Activision. So let's get into it. Let's talk about it. But Call of Duty legends Seth Scump Agner and Hector hecz Rodriguez have filed a lawsuit against Activision, citing its monopolistic hold over the COD esports scene. We already know this without even being told the facts and details. Of course, the only place you can play competitive Call of Duty as a pro player is in the Activision League, the CDL. You have to be a part of one of the 12 teams. You have to get signed up by an org. You're stuck in contracts that you have to abide by. If you're not, you're sacked by the pro team, and the best thing you can do is play in the amateur leagues, but they're not really going anywhere. You don't even get how many of you guys actually watch amateur Call of Duty tournaments? You probably don't even watch them anymore. They're very hard to get any sort of viewership for, rarely ever streamed, and making a name for yourself as a Call of Duty pro player is very, very difficult. So, yeah, not very likely. You pretty much have to play in this pro league and try and get your shot in the pro league. Otherwise, you ain't making it. You ain't making any good money when it comes to competitive Call of Duty. But, yes, so Optic Scump, COD's, this is why it's big. It's because it involves in Scump for a start. Scump is one of the biggest content creators ever for Call of Duty, if not the biggest content creator that's ever been for Call of Duty. hecz, who of course created the Optic brand that is very synonymous. Many of you will probably know Optic from sniping days, montages, Scump himself, nade shot when he was back on the team. All these amazing things that happen in Call of Duty, a lot of them have to do with, of course, the Optic brand. But anyway, the lawsuit alleges Activision holds an unlawful monopoly over the COD esports scene and has wielded its power to prohibit growth in an anti-competitive nature, namely those involved who are taking the legal stance, that being hecz and Scump, of course, the Optic brand. But it states here that Call of Duty's league initial entry fee alleging Activision coerced 12 teams to pay an extortionate $27.5 million for the privilege of being able to compete in this league. Before the CDL, before Activision's league, it was free to get into. I believe maybe you had to actually pay a fee to show up to these tournaments or something. I'm not sure on that, but it was essentially free. You'd go to these these tournaments. Amateurs could show up. It was crazy back in the day. It was all on console. It was all on LAN. You'd go to these tournaments and you'd make whatever you make. There wasn't huge prize pools, but it was, honestly, it was a lot better than what it is now. It wasn't 12 teams. It was many teams. You could have amateurs that would beat pro teams. It was that kind of thing. It was there to be won by anyone who showed up on the day, sort of thing. You had to buy passes. That was it. You had to buy passes to those events. That was the only thing you had to pay for. But there was basically nothing to, actually play at tournaments and get the chance to compete for about, what, $50,000 or something per tournament? That was about as standard back in the day. But, yeah. It was just last year, actually, that the Overwatch League, another exclusive esports ecosystem under the Activision Blizzard King umbrella, crumbled, so that failed, and teams are being owed up to $7.5 million at the time of its shuttering. That is in Overwatch. So the likelihood of this lawsuit going through and being, taken fully by, Optic and Scump and that, which they've probably been advised by their lawyers that they can do as well before they even, of course, took the opportunity to take this lawsuit on, might have a case here and might just sue Activision and hit them really hard in the pockets here. But the teams impacted are seeking up to $680 million in damages. So The lawsuit points to a number of restrictions enforced by COD's publisher. For one, Activision allegedly holds the exclusive right to contract with the most lucrative sponsors, limiting the brand's individual teams and players can enlist to drive additional revenue. So, for instance, CDL, I believe, is with the Monster brand at the moment, or has been at some point in Call of Duty itself, has had the Monster brand. Let's say a Call of Duty team like Optic wanted to have a drink sponsor that wasn't Monster, they'd probably be outright told no by Activision because they need to be promoting the Monster brand. If they had G Fuel or something like that, any sort of drink company you could think of, they would probably be banned from taking on that sponsor, which is, of course, revenue that that team could have been having, could have been getting themselves, but Activision would say, no, you have to have this sponsor and you have to promote this brand, which, of course, is Activision's sponsor. So they're probably pocketing the money, whereas Optic have just said, hey, you get maybe you get a cut, maybe you get 10% of whatever they're making from having this brand deal with this drinks company. But yeah, so that is one way that they were already kind of monopolizing and taking away the revenue from these teams. Furthermore, those signed to the CDL allegedly must refrain from participating in any or supporting any Call of Duty leagues or tournaments other than the Activision Card League. This has been a hot topic in recent years, with off-season tournaments typically a sore spot for CDL players' involvement. Never guaranteed, okay? So basically, CDL players, a lot of the times you wouldn't see them in tournaments outside of what Activision was hosting, because Activision would simply say, you cannot show up in this tournament. You know, they have a contract that means they can't show up in this tournament. And then it says allegedly here, but this has been a known thing. A lot of the times, pro players can't go and compete in these tournaments, which are probably smaller prize pools. I believe some might even actually have been bigger prize pools than what Activision's been offering with the Pro League. And they simply weren't allowed to compete for being a Pro League player and being in those, you know, competitions and stuff. So that's another way that these players have lost out on serious amounts of cash just because they've been told no by this, you know, forced upon contract, it seems, for them to be in this Pro League. The restriction also extends to commercialized Call of Duty gameplay outside the league, meaning teams cannot monetize friendly competitions, with zero bearing on the CDL standings. We know about this as we've had, if you don't know, Optic Hecz, who is a part of the Optic brand. He makes a lot of tournaments involved with Warzone, even Pro League tournaments. He does very goofy tournaments sometimes, very serious tournaments sometimes. And sometimes he's just told no by Activision. He can't make a tournament, a friendly, even like, you know, players against other players with a bot on their team. Sometimes those requests are refused because Activision simply says he cannot do that at the time if, you know, they might have their own tournament going on, etc. He has had a few tournaments pass through, which means Activision must have allowed them, you know, here and there, but not always. And sometimes pro players aren't also allowed to compete in those tournaments either. Next up, referencing specific interactions with league officials, the lawsuit highlights one occasion in which Scump, the biggest name in CDL at the time, was forced to agree a lengthy Activision-drafted documentation while at a photo shoot without adequate time to review, so he couldn't get his lawyers to review this document or anything, and was under threat of being excluded from the COD League. This is something that might be factually true because you can actually trace this back to a tweet posted by Scump in November 2020, where he put, the CDO also made us sign a player contract in front of them without allowing us to run it by our lawyers at the player summit. It was a sign it now or you can't play at Minnesota type exchange. I'm going to probably get fined for this too, just letting you all know. So that Scump tweeted that November 15th of 2020, saying that this did happen. This was before any lawsuit came out. This is like four years ago now. Well, 3 years ago and a bit. Saying that, hey, he was forced to sign this contract without any sort of time to review it, and basically told, hey, if you don't sign this contract, you ain't playing in this league. You ain't playing. You ain't getting paid. You're nothing. You are out of the league, and COD Esports is done for you. That is crazy. That is absolutely insane. That is something that I imagine is going to not go down very well in the court of law against Activision if this comes out to be true and can be proved, which I imagine will be, you know, the case. Obviously, like I said, Hecz and Scump have taken this lawsuit on, meaning they must have been informed by our lawyer that, hey, they do have a case here and they have some evidence to be able to back up what they're claiming here. Keeping with Scump again, the lawsuit even claims the CDL is still imposing various restrictions on the mega popular COD star to this day, despite his retirement. Activision uses its monopoly power to prevent these former players from accepting vast categories of revenue opportunities related to professional Call of Duty. Now, this we know is also very true, simply because if you look at it with the watch party drama, which I did cover on the channel, basically, if you guys didn't know, Scump runs a watch party with Optic. They watch the games, they watch the pro games live. Nothing crazy wrong with that. They don't, you know, take it as their own sort of thing. They just stream the games that are, basically it's promoting the CDL, which is the crazy thing. But Activision at one point forced Scump to move his entire stream from Twitch, when he used to even do Twitch and YouTube, but was mainly, focused on Twitch, was forced to not do his watch party on Twitch anymore, and was actually had a DMCA strike when he did actually take it as opportunity after being told that he couldn't, that he continued to stream on Twitch because that's where he built his brand, that's where he's, followed the most, where he's, been subbed to, he makes a lot of revenue from Twitch, and was told he could no longer stream on Twitch and got hit with a DMC both on his YouTube stream and his Twitch stream, and just got taken down completely. He couldn't stream the games live. He got completely taken down, taken offline, and then was eventually had to sort things out of Activision. And obviously here is probably where Activision forced themselves and said, hey, we're not playing around. You're streaming on YouTube because we have this brand deal with YouTube. So whether you like it or not, you're streaming on YouTube, whether it affects you or not. And they did. They forced Scump to do a CDL watch party, even though he is retired and has no affiliation really with the pro league and that, besides, being a former pro player, was forced to stream on YouTube, whether he liked it or not. Not a horrible thing, of course. He still gets to make some sort of revenue, but that definitely hit the pockets because Twitch is definitely bigger for streaming on than YouTube still is. But that's one place that we already know that sort of happened. And so at this stage, with Major 2 online qualifiers just about to commence, it's now unclear how the remainder of the 2024 CDL season will pan out. Competition could come to a close much sooner than planned. Optic could refuse to compete. All the remaining weeks may play out as intended in what could be the CDL's final year of operations. This could be it. This could be the end of Call of Duty competitive, at least under Activision. But I'll talk about that as well, how that might even be more than what you're possibly thinking. So that's some big news right there. And I'm going to talk about this in why I think this could affect Call of Duty itself, what this could mean for the future for Call of Duty competitive, and the actual games itself when it comes to making things such as rank play and that, and how Activision might react to this. So the big thing is here, hecz and Scump are going after Activision for all the money that they have lost in revenue, whether it be sponsors, tournaments that they couldn't make or play in, couldn't get sponsors, of course, for their brands. The fact that hecz was actually forced to partner up with Envy in order to get into the league because he had to showcase that he was, able to financially support him owning a team in the CDL, but he actually was forced into a merger that he probably didn't want to do with Envy to combine the two brands for him to actually own a team in the CDL era. That was a huge monopoly right there. But what could this mean for Call of Duty in the future? So this could be the absolute end of the CDL. If Optic Scump and hecz win this lawsuit, which I think they have a strong chance and a strong case of, and you let me know down below, do you think hecz and Optic and Scump have a huge case on here? Do you think they could win this case? Do you want them to win this case? I kind of do want them to win this case, to be honest. This is, like I said, a huge undertaking. I do believe Activision has had a massive monopoly and just kind of flexed themselves on the pro community and competitive in general, and more so ruined it in general as well. They've definitely taken it a step back to what it was back in the day. I'd like to see them win this and possibly get this lawsuit over Activision. But the ramifications that would come after this would be insane. If Scump and hecz win this lawsuit, would probably be the end of the CDL, so there'd be no more competitive Call of Duty. And I think some people would say, oh, well, wouldn't we just go back to making the old days where, teams would show up to an event organized by MLG, etc.? Probably not, because I wouldn't be surprised if Activision were spiteful enough to go out there and just close down any tournaments. They would say no to Call of Duty competitive, unless it was Warzone, which I imagine would be more used for them to, make revenue from, ads and streaming and bring in a focus on the game. I think they would shut down Call of Duty competitive as a whole. They would make it so you cannot make a Call of Duty Pro tournament using their game, because obviously Activision owns the Call of Duty IP. I think this lawsuit, if it goes through, would be the absolute end of Call of Duty competitive. And also, I think this will affect the games for the future. I think we will no longer see rank play in a Call of Duty title. We know Activision doesn't care too much about rank play. It's never been a real big focus. They don't really make the games anymore based on Call of Duty competitive at all. Call of Duty competitive takes a massive backseat, even though there is a massive league for this, for esports for Call of Duty. And I think they will just not do rank play anymore. I think they would take it away and say, look, we're not doing rank play anymore. Doesn't do revenue for us. Obviously, we just got fined. We've, just been fined by Scump and hecz, two big creators and helpers who've made Call of Duty competitive what it is today. I think we could see the end of rank play in Call of Duty forever. They would just not make it, stop doing it, kind of have a Infinity Ward stance on like they did with like MW 2019, MW2 and all that, where they just didn't really make rank play, and then eventually they did because there was so much outburst about it. But it was very half-hearted in that. I think we could see the absolute end of rank play in a Call of Duty game. And yeah, I think there's going to be huge ramifications for this. I think this is going to change the Call of Duty landscape forever. I think this is going to change how Activision behaves with us as well. This also will be interesting to see how Microsoft does in this situation, now that they are the, you know, owners of the Activision brand. Are they going to step in here? Are they going to like react to this? You know, what are they going to do? Activision themselves have actually reacted to this as well. I'll quickly talk about that. But Activision did state themselves, let me just find the tweet for it. But Activision did respond to this statement. They have actually came out publicly and said this statement. Mr. Rodriguez, aka Optic Hecz, and Mr. Abner, aka Scump, demanded that Activision pay them tens of millions of dollars to avoid this meritless litigation, they say. When their demands were not met, they filed. We will strongly defend against these claims, which have no basis in fact or in law. We are disappointed that these members of the esports community would bring this suit, which is disruptive to team owners, players, fans, and partners who have invested so much time and energy into the Call of Duty League success. Very bland, very professional, very corporate post there. I'm quite iffy on that because it says successful. The CDL has not been successful in any way, shape, or form compared to, you know, it's supposed to generate profit for these teams. Realistically, and I'm pretty sure it's actually factually true, about 3 out of the 12 teams are possibly operating at a profit, whereas every other team is operating at a loss just because of the huge, you know, cost to get into the league, the huge cost of player salaries that are forced upon. They have to pay minimum $50,000 a year salary for these players to compete in the league. It's far too high of a cost, and a lot of these teams are going bankrupt or, you know, trying to get out of the league because it simply isn't working. The only teams really making any money are probably 100 Thieves, Optic, FaZe, but that's because of their own brands themselves, being able to, you know, promote like their clothing brands that they have, you know, obviously their YouTube generates revenue based off of their videos and stuff and entertainment. They have to do a lot of outside work to even make their actual teams profitable to be able to stay and compete in this league. I'm interested to know how this goes. This is a very, very big lawsuit. I want you guys to let me know down below. What do you think? Do you think this is going to change Call of Duty forever? Do you think this is something that's going to have massive impact? Let me know down below what you think. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe notifications on. I'll catch you guys next video. Goodbye.